Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Hong Kong and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel quite a few times before. Now, I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last couple of years, quite a few different styles, and if people were to ask me about this brewery, I would say that they are just pretty solid all round. Now, the beer that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I haven't tried from this brewery before. It is a slightly older release, this one, but it's also a style that can mature very, very well, and I guess you could call this one something of a special release for this brewery as well. So yeah, needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to stick to the Hong Kong SAR. We're going to go over to Hong Kong Island, to the southern part of the island, to a little place called Wong, Chuk, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Black Kite Brewery. So this particular beer is called King of the Beasts. It comes in at 9% ABV, and this one is an English style barley wine. So yeah, this beer was apparently released in January of 2022 for the Chinese New Year. That year was of course the year of the tiger, hence the tigers on the label here and the name King of the Beasts. But yeah, very first time I'm trying a barley wine from Black Kite. We've had quite a few nice big West Coast double IPAs and stuff like that from them before, so I have to say on the basis of that I'm very, very curious to see what their English barley wine is going to have in store for us. This beer I actually found in the Wine Rack store in Tsim Sha Tsui in Kowloon here in Hong Kong as well, and yeah, it was just a little bit of a random find, this one, in all honesty. But yeah, very, very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So let's crack on and see what we get out of this beer. So yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Black Kite Brewery before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Hong Kong playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to quite regularly, of course, since I am based here in Hong Kong. And yeah, do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to the brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Black Kite Brewery once again then. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, Black Kite Brewery are based in Wong Chuk Hang, which is in the southern part of Hong Kong Island, and the brewery was founded back in 2014 by brothers David and Daniel Galley, both of whom were born in Hong Kong, but their family hails originally from England. So Dan originally studied mechanical engineering at the University of Pennsylvania in the US, and he went on to work as a software engineer, while David studied economics at Boston University, and then he worked in compliance within the finance industry. So these guys were, you know, quite big beer enthusiasts on the side. They were exposed to craft beer in America, and so they wanted to brew some of these beers for themselves here in Hong Kong. But they got started, and Daniel left the company in 2019, but David continued brewing, and he also teamed up with Tom Turner of Neon Cider, who's originally from Dorset in England, and of course Neon Cider is the first cidery ever in Hong Kong, which is quite exciting. But he also used to brew for Young Master Brewery, and he's now the head brewer for both Neon Cider and Black Kite. I think he's a director of the company these days too. But then in 2020 they rebranded to change the logo to a more simplified design, but they still show the elements of Hong Kong, of course. But over the years they've continued to build up the brewery infrastructure and build up their sales, but they are still a very small operation. But the name of the brewery, Black Kite, is taken from the black kite bird, which you can see quite regularly in Hong Kong, and as of November 2024, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 65 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. But yeah, in my experience, a very well-rounded brewery. These guys tend to produce their beers on the slightly maltier side of things in my mind. So yeah, their beers are often pretty damn solid, but yeah, you just get a little bit more of that kind of oily, malty mouthfeel out of them, which I do have to say I quite enjoy. But yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about Black Kite Brewery for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that is your very brief history of Black Kite Brewery. So let's go on and have a wee look at the beer itself. So like I said to you earlier, this one is called King of the Beasts, 9% ABV, an English style barley wine, this one. The barley wine style is of course related to the Pale Ale, IPA and Double IPA. Basically, this family of 4 styles are related by their hop to malt ratios. The barley wine is basically the original triple IPA. A lot of the modern triple IPAs use the, from what I understand, they use the double IPA hop to malt ratio, but they just put more malt in, and so it's higher in alcohol. So yeah, that's what distinguishes a barley wine from a modern triple or quadruple or even quintuple IPA, as we're seeing these days. But yeah, the two sort of variations, or there's a couple of variations of the barley wine. You of course get wheat wines and rye wines as well, where about 30 to 40% of the malt base is wheat or rye. But yeah, the English barley wine, flavour wise, is a little bit more toasty in its brown sugary character and a little bit drier in its fruity side of things, whereas the American barley wine for me has always been a little bit more oily and sweet and caramelly, and the fruits are that little bit kind of redder almost, you could say, not dry like the English ones. But yeah, as an English barley wine, I think this could be quite interesting. I don't think I've had too many English barley wines from Hong Kong breweries. I think just one actually from Yardley Brothers, come to think of it, and that was a great beer, I have to say. So yeah, high hopes for this one, but it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. It says, we usher in the year of the water tiger with our boldest expression yet, a hybrid barley wine blending Pilsner, Munich, Carapils, Cara Amber malts with Hornindal Kveik yeast. You'll enjoy a deep stone fruit flavour, pours rich ruby amber with nose of tea cakes, savour notes of fig, longan and marmalade. So yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I don't think I've ever heard of a barley wine being brewed with a Kveik yeast. Usually they're used for like saisons and for hazy IPAs and stuff like that. But a German malt base here as well in an English barley wine, that's quite interesting. But yeah, I'd just like to have a wee look at the artwork on this one again. Before we open it up, you can see the lovely tigers in there. Beautiful animals, I have to say. I do like the tigers. But yeah, the way the artwork on this one is done is very nice. But there you can see the Black Kite, or one of the Black Kite Brewery symbols there. We've got a bottle cap on this one as well, which I don't actually have from Black Kite Brewery, so I'll need to make sure that I keep this one. I might keep this bottle actually, because yeah, not too many bottles to be found from Black Kite. But as I say, 9% ABV, English style barley wine, this one. Let's get it out into the glass and we'll see what it's all about. So let's do this. A little bit of smoke on the opening there, and we'll get this guy out. This does look nice, I have to say. I think that'll do for the moment. Got maybe about half of the beer out and into the glass. Let me just line that up there so it looks nice. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one, we can see that it's poured with about a 2/3 finger of a frothy, I would say kind of fawn light beige coloured head. If I bring that up to the camera, you can see the bubbles are kind of medium on the surface there, but the head gets a little bit foamier the further up that you go. The colour of this one's lovely. It's actually like a sort of unstained mahogany. Been doing a lot of stuff with guitars recently, so yeah, the wood colours are very much in my head at the moment. But yeah, it's got this lovely, maybe deep mahogany, blood orangey type colour. This one, it's almost the same colour as like a West Coast double IPA, which I guess the original English barley wines kind of would have been, to be honest. But yeah, it's actually quite clear, this one as well. It's a little bit sweaty, the glass, because of the condensation. But yeah, this beer is actually pretty much crystal clear. Don't know how well you guys can see that on the camera right enough, but yeah, a tiny little bit of natural haze to it, but I would say overall crystal clear. Not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one, and you can see the head is just fading away to be a thinner, more foamy layer. But beautiful colour on this one. As I often say, as I usually always say in the videos, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And when it comes to more brown beers like barley wines and things, those two variables can really come into play. But yeah, this one looks great. Nothing too unusual about this, but definitely one of the brighter barley wines that I've come across in recent times. There are a couple of ways to play with this style. You can of course do a double mash if you really want to. You can do a longer wort boil, which is going to give you a more kind of leathery mouthfeel with the brown sugary side of things. And yeah, I think this one, by the looks of it, I don't think it's had too long a wort boil actually. But yeah, nothing else we really need to say about the technicalities of the style or the appearance. Let's have a wee look at the aroma of this one then and see what it's all about. I have to admit, see, if I was to smell this blind, I don't think I would pick up that this was a barley wine. It smells like so German, and makes sense because it's got the German malts in there. But yeah, it actually smells like, it smells kind of like a Märzen or something like that. That's really not what I expected from this beer at all, actually. It really smells... here in Hong Kong, in the 759 stores, which is basically an import food shop, a chain, there's a beer in there, the Anno 1050 Zenfunzig, if you want to do it in German, which is a Märzen. It's kind of one of my go-to beers if I just want to go and have a beer with a friend or something like that. The aroma of this one really reminds me of that. I really did not expect that at all. But yeah, very much a sort of German lager Märzen kind of thing coming out of this, which is really not what I expected. Even when we sugar it up a little bit, I'm still getting all of these notes out of it. But yeah, interesting stuff. So for me, the this beer is just really not what I expected at all. I'm curious to see what the flavour is going to have in store for us. But yeah, the backbone of this one, it's like a lovely kind of fresh wholemeal brown bready bread crust that's in there. You've got little touches of yeah, you've got a little touch of kind of woody and crackery character as well, but not too much. Then you've got wholemeal brown bread. Of course, you're going to get these lovely sweet notes from, you know, the Carapils and the Cara Amber and the Munich malts as well. There's a lot of white bread in there, and it's got that slight dryness to it that you would expect of Munich malts. I've often said European malts for me are that little bit drier compared to the American ones, which are more sort of oily, I would say. But the German malts in particular have this very distinct blend of dryness and graininess to them. Over the years, I've really it's just something you pick up from kind of experience, if you can call it that, just tasting and smelling different beers and stuff. The German malt aroma is very, very obvious after a while, and it really sticks out to me in this one, that bit of dryness that it has. So yeah, wholemeal brown bread, white bread in there. Then you've got a mix of brown sugar and things like that. You've got a nice little bit of toasty brown sugary character. You can smell a little bit of the drier Pilsner malt at the back of the nose as well. Yeah, so you've got that drier Pilsner malty character in there, and also the Pilsner malt's kind of in the top of the nose there. It's got a little bit of almost aromaticity to it as well. But yeah, in the brown sugary side of things, you've got like McVitie's digestive biscuit, you have got a little bit of like toasty caramel in there, and then a more sort of oily sweet caramel as well, which I think is very, very nice. Yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to say about the aroma of this one. There's maybe a very slight nuttiness to it, but yeah, it's certainly not the most punchy or forthright, I'm not sure what word to say there. It's definitely not the most expressive barley wine that I've come across in terms of its malty side of things. On the yeasty side of things, in the back of the nose, and I was curious about this because of the use of the Kveik yeast in here. There's just a little bit of like a white bready, sort of crackery type character there. The yeast doesn't come out of this one too obviously either, and that's, I have to say, that's something that's quite interesting about this beer as well. I'm just going to stick the light down one notch there. I notice it's reflecting a lot. There you go, you can see the label on the beer a bit better now. But yeah, yeah, yeasty character's just quite white bready and quite crackery and woody and things like that for me. But yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of things with this beer. In terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, it didn't actually say what hops they'd used in this one, but the kind of classics to use if it's an English style barley wine, the most likely candidate would be Bramling's Cross, but they're using German malt in this one rather than, you know, English Maris Otter. So I'm guessing they might well use an American hop in this. And from the aroma, I'm wondering if there's Cascade in this. So the green component in this beer, you definitely have this little touch of like earthiness to it. The other candidate could be, if you really wanted to, would be Northern Brewer from Germany. It's quite a popular hop to use in Dunkels and Doppelbocks actually. But the hoppy character in this one, it's got a wee bit of earthiness, a little bit of woodiness, of course. Nice floral aromaticity, some nice grassiness in there as well. But yeah, thing to remember with the barley wines is they are quite hop forward beers. This one's about 2 and a half years old roughly at the time of drinking, so the hoppy character will have dropped out of this quite a bit. But barley wines can mature very, very nicely actually, but I would say you always want to drink them before, you know, within the first 3 years. Maybe between 6 months and 3 years is a good time for the barley wines, because otherwise they develop this real kind of spicy, skunky sort of note. So yeah, the green component of this one, still quite a little bit of floral character in there, a nice little bit of zesty grassiness. The green component for me is still quite apparent in this one. But the fruity side of the beer, there's a lot of like sultana in there. I get a lot of nice kind of oily sultana, you know, dry white green grapes. Good little bit of oily pear as well. And yeah, lovely sort of oily peary note. Good little bit of, I do get a wee bit of the fig they're talking about. And yeah, I would say, yeah, oily pear, maybe a little touch of fresh green apple. Not so much in the way of the marmalade orange, in honesty. So that's an interesting point to make there. But yeah, for me, sultanas, pears, a little touch of fresh green apple, and I do get that little hint of fig that they're talking about. But yeah, a really interesting aroma, this one. Not what I would have expected at all, based on previous experiences of the style. But yeah, as I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. This one's very German for an English barley wine, like I said, but yeah, that sort of figgy note and the pear and the sultana is what makes me think there's a bit of Cascade in this one. But yeah, always take a bit of time to enjoy that, but I think it's about time that we get stuck into this beer and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is King of the Beasts, a 9% barley wine from the wonderful Black Kite Brewery in Wong, Chuk over on Hong Kong Island. This one was their 2022 Chinese New Year release. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh. Now that's quite unusual. If I was to taste this blind, would I guess that this was a barley wine? I don't think so, to be honest with you. I'd taste this and really not know what it was. It's a nice beer, this one. I do like it. It's just not the most, for me at least, it's not the most kind of true to style barley wine. Even for the English barley wine, it's a little bit, as I say, I'm just not sure what to make of this one. It's, as I say, it's a nice, enjoyable beer. But you get things like this every so often when you're reviewing, where you're just like, you know, would I actually think this was a barley wine if I hadn't been told what it is? And yeah, it kind of really, it almost reminds me of like a very strong Märzen lager beer, this one. Yeah, but obviously there's the technical difference between the lagers and the ales. The ales are fermented at higher temperatures, 15, 16 degrees, top fermenting yeasts. The lagers are fermented at lower temperatures, you know, 8 to 12 degrees, like bottom fermenting yeasts and things. But yeah, this beer, the flavour profile really does remind me of like a kind of stronger Märzen, or maybe like a Maibock or something like that. But the thing that would stop it being a Maibock is you can feel the green component is that little bit stronger, and the fruity character is a little bit stronger too. Yeah, this is a beer that's really made me think a wee bit, and as I say, after 4,200 reviews, you do want things that are going to make you think a little bit. So yeah, kudos to Black Kite for making me think a wee bit about this, that's for sure. But one thing you can say about it too is that the Kveik yeast is almost giving it just a little bit of zip on the front of the tongue there. But yeah, like I said, this is certainly not what I would have expected from this beer, that's for sure. Yeah, let's just break it down then and describe what's going on a bit more in depth with the flavour. Yeah, middle third of the palate then. So the backbone of the beer, you've got this little bit of like, or this backbone of kind of fresh brown bready bread crust in there. As you move further forward, you've got a little bit more of a kind of woody, crackery sort of thing. Yeah. So a little bit of woody, sort of crackery kind of character there toward the front. But then yeah, above the brown bready bread crust, you start to get the kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of note coming out of the beer. And the brown bread, it's the German malts in here, it's quite smooth and it has just that little touch of sweetness to it. Above that, you're getting the more white bready sort of layer coming out of the beer, and that'll be the Munich malts. So the bready notes in this one are really nice and very familiar for me as well. But above the white bready layer, you start to get that little touch of like toasty brown sugar. Actually, so yeah, a lovely little bit of toasty brown sugar in there, and then you can feel there's a slight layer of a more kind of leathery brown sugar coming out of this one. So yeah, toasty brown sugar, a more leathery brown sugar in there as well, but it's not too leathery, this one. It's quite obvious with this beer it hasn't had a massively long wort boil, actually. Because the longer wort boil would give you those more distinct leathery brown sugars, but above the that kind of drier brown sugary character, you get that little circle in the middle of your palate, which is distinctly kind of sweet and caramelly, and then you've got the more McVitie's digestive biscuity type characters sitting on top of that. That's going to be your carapils that gives you that. And yeah, further back on that middle third of your palate, you can feel the sort of dryness of the Pilsner malt coming out of this one. That sort of just dry, almost, is aromaticity the right word? That little bit of dryness coming out of the Pilsner side of things with this beer as well, which is quite interesting. As I say, it's a very quirky barley wine, this one. The German malts really, as I say, give you that sort of Maibocky or Mai Doppelbock, I think would be the better descriptor for this one. It gives you that type vibe to it. So yeah, I think that's everything we can really say about the middle third of the palate in this beer. Let's go to the back third of the palate then. As I've often said, sweeter flavours come out further forward in the palate, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. But yeah, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours, pardon me, to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. So yeah, the border region on this one between middle and back third of your palate, you get the little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the white bread on top then, and the wee bit of Pilsner malty dryness. And the base of that back third of your palate is of course the bread crusty note. You've got a little bit of cracker above that, then the wholemeal brown bready layer, which was a little bit lighter, taller and drier of course, then the white bready layer above that, which again is a little bit lighter, taller and drier, and then yeah, you can feel the drier Pilsner malts just creeping over the top of that, and a little touch of the more toasty brown sugars. Then above everything else you've got the yeasty side of the beer. So let's have a wee look at those yeasty notes in this one, and this will be interesting because it's the Kveik yeast as well. So, the yeasty side of the beer for me, it's got like quite a dense and more grainy, brown bready core, if you like. I think we can safely say that, yeah, more dense and brown bready core. As you move out from that core, it's got a little bit more of a, it's got a little bit more of a kind of, grainier white bready character to it, and then the very edge is a little bit more of a sort of crackery and bread crusty kind of affair. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think is really quite nice. Yeah, the yeasty side of this beer, I think is it's quite quirky. It has the sort of some of the characteristics I would have expected of that Kveik yeast, because you know Kveik is of course more of a kind of farmhousey, saison-y type yeast, but it can give you quite a little bit of fruitiness as well, and you can feel just a little bit like pear or apricot, dry pear and apricot in that yeasty character as well. But yeah, definitely the back third of your palate you can feel the flavour is taller, then as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue it kind of just condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. But yeah, I think we've said everything we need about the malty and yeasty side of the beer then. Let's go on to the hoppy and fruity side of things to round off our tasting section. So yeah, back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, it's got a little touch of kind of woody character as well, but then as you push further and further forward along the sides of your palate, it gives you more of a kind of floral aromatic sort of thing. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this beer is really, really nice for me. Yeah. So, for me, that little bit of floral aromaticity you get at the front corners of the palate there, it is just a little bit more kind of spicy, and then yeah, around the front curve of the tongue it's that little bit lighter and more grassy. And then the fruity side of this one's kind of interesting too. It's kind of different actually from what the aroma would have you believe. So let's just look at that. So the front third of your palate, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. So you've got the wholemeal brown bread in the base, the white bread on top, then a wee bit of the dry Pilsner malty there. The base of that, the base of that front third of your palate, you've got the kind of brown bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, and then the brown bready bread crust, the Jacob's cream cracker, the wholemeal bread, the white bread, and then a little touch of the toasty brown sugar. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So let's look at that fruity side of things then. Yeah, the fruity side of the beer for me, it's quite I'd say that it's quite it's not quite as red fruity as the aroma would have you believe. So if you go to the back of that sort of oily bubble where the fruity esters roll the way out of the beer, if you go there, you get some sort of sultana type notes, you know, the dry white green grape. Then as you move further forward from that, it's a little bit more oily and sort of peary, and into the front half of that front third of your palate, you get more of there's a very slight like fresh green apple or something like that, and a very kind of a slightly citrusy note just behind the front tip of the tongue where you're mixing with the grassy esters. You do get a little hint, pardon me, of figgy character just pushing its way out of this one, but really not too much actually. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer is more peary and sultana-like rather than being red fruity, and you would expect a wee bit more red fruit from an English barley wine. And as I say, for the English barley wine, for me, I think a slightly longer wort boil could have given this one a little bit more barley wine character and sort of thickened up the body a wee bit, because it is very, as I say, it's very Maibocky. It's like, you know, like strong Märzen flavour profile like this beer. So it's an interesting one, but as I say, for me, even if I think of the English barley wines I've had before, it's a little bit clean and lager-like, this one, rather than being a big oily ale in a sense. So I think at this point we can move on and talk about the mouthfeel of this beer. So like I said, this beer, it's quite clean and sort of light in a way for a barley wine. So yeah, I've described this beer as being kind of mid-bodied, maybe pushing the top end of mid-bodied. You would expect a barley wine to be kind of full-bodied, in all honesty. There is a little bit of carbonation. This one, it gives you that little bit of a prickle. It does feel quite clean in a sense too. And yeah, the way it goes together is pretty interesting. So for me, IBU wise, there's maybe about 30 or 40 IBUs to this one. You do get a wee bit hoppy bitterness there, and of course you've got the kind of grainy dryness as well. So yeah, I do like that about the beer. And the maltiness, I say, it's got dryness underneath, kind of smoothness in the middle with a little touch of sweetness, and a more toasty, dry, sweet character sitting on top of that. And yeah, the fruity side of this one's a little bit more oily and leans toward the drier side of things as well. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this beer is quite interesting. Like I say, the flavour profile of this one does remind me a little bit more of the German Maibox rather than an English barley wine, right enough. But the use of the German malt in this one doesn't necessarily have to make it feel German. We've had barley wines before that use a lot of German malt, but I think the Kite yeast in this one might have been the kind of wrong choice, because it gives you this more kind of grainy, biscuity type character. Maybe using like one of the more English ale yeasts or something like that would have been a better choice for this beer, and give it a slightly longer wort boil, I think could have been a good choice too. So yeah, all in all, it's a nice enough beer, this one, but just not so true to style for me, actually. So yeah, if they were going to do this again, I would remarket it, and I would brew it with I'd either brew it with a lager yeast and call it like a Mai Doppelbock or something like that, or I'd use an English ale yeast and give it a longer wort boil and then call it an English barley wine. So yeah, I'd be very curious to see the brew sheet for this one, to see about the hops and things like that and exactly what they've done with this. But yeah, an interesting beer, this one, but not the most true to style for me. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the King of the Beasts, a 9% English style barley wine from Black Kite Brewery in Wong, Chuk here in Hong Kong. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Black Kite Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slange it, Scott, cheers, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys again very, very shortly. Ciao just now.